So today, what I'm going to talk about is solving the EVM puzzle. First, I'm going to talk about what and why. Why would someone want to use earned value management within Unanet, and what are the reasons why they would want to use this? So we'll talk about exactly how that big picture looks. Then I'm going to switch over to Unanet, and we'll talk about how to set up a sample project and set up your projects for reporting and running earned value reports out of Unanet. We'll go through some sample reports, and we'll start analyzing those reports. We'll talk about what key metrics on those reports are critical and crucial for you in managing the effectiveness of your projects. And then we'll talk about forecasting. Earned value reporting is very key and can be incremental in forecasting. So we'll talk about how that forecasting piece of it fits into earned value reporting. At the end, we'll talk about how you can go ahead and put the EVM puzzle into place and start implementing it yourself within your projects in Unanet. Earned value management, what is it? Why would somebody use it? Earned value management is a project performance methodology for basically managing how your project is performing over a given period of time. An earned value management system is compiled and based on 32 criteria that was developed by ANSI, which stands for the American National Standards Institute. And this criteria is compiled into 5 categories. And what these 5 categories do is they provide a structured set of management practices to establish something called a performance measurement baseline, a PMB, for a project, and then how you measure and analyze the achievement of that project, of that baseline, over a given period of time. Now what this does, it provides greater visibility into how your projects, how your programs are performing. I'm going to talk about this over and over again, over a given period of time. It's how you're going to measure the performance of your project over that time frame. Not only can it help with ensuring you're meeting any kind of contractual earned value reporting requirements you have, but also enables you as the end user or possibly the contractor to have a much improved ability to take corrective action if there's issues within your project, as well as forecast costs at completion based on performance to date. All those factors come into play in how you set up your projects and measure earned value over a given period of time. So we'll see it's broken into 5 different categories. First one is organizing. Organizing talks about how are you going to structure your project. How are you going to set up your projects in Unanet? How are you going to define a task hierarchy, a WBS? How are you going to set up your organizations? How is that whole picture going to look? The second category is planning and budgeting. How are you going to schedule your work? Are you going to have milestones? Will you set up a time phase budget? Are you going to have significant cost elements, discrete work packages? Will it be level of effort or billable projects you're putting together? And that's how that planning and budgeting piece comes into play. The third category is accounting. How are you going to record your direct costs? How will you record your indirect costs? Are you going to put it into your WBS? Will you summarize it at a different level? Is it required for your accounting purposes? All that comes into play in the accounting category. The fourth category is analysis. How are you going to determine your variances? Are you going to budget your actuals for indirects or just directs? How will you manage any action plans? How are you going to forecast? How will you estimate where you're going to be at the end of your period of performance? And then revisions is the last category, which talks about how you're going to incorporate changes, scope creep, baseline changes. How will you incorporate that into your earned value management system? And how will you document those changes? So all these categories are what make up an effective earned value management system. This is a picture describing why someone would use EVM. Now this picture does not represent anything we have in Unanet today. Does not talk about any kind of projects we have today, but it's a sample to show you exactly how this would look. On the left-hand side, we'll see we have some units of measure. And this could be dollars or hours, whatever you would like to define. On the bottom row, we have months. You can do earned value reporting in weeks, semi-months, months, years. But for today's sample, we're going to look at months versus this measurement units. We'll see we have 3 lines. The blue line depicts scheduled completion. The burgundy line depicts physical completion. And the yellow line depicts committed cost. In this sample, the blue line is talking about scheduled performance. Here's how I've scheduled how my project will perform over a given period of time. From January to December, here's what my baseline looks like. The physical completion, the burgundy line, talks about, well, how am I actually performing? What have I performed to date? What have I physically done against that baseline? We'll see we started off pretty well. It was above and beyond where we said we were going to be, and then all of a sudden it takes a dip, which depicts that we are actually behind schedule. If you look at the yellow line, it talks about, well, how much did we spend against what we had baselined, against where we said we were going to be. So we'll see we also start out pretty well, and then we take another dip. So not only are we behind schedule, we are also spending less than what we said we were going to do. So this image is showing us our schedule performance against our cost performance, and it's showing us how late are we and where's our variances. This is a kind of a sample picture of why someone would look at EVM and how it can help you in measuring your project performance. Let's talk about how we would set up a sample project or process within Unanet. The first step, what we would do, is set up our projects and or our tasks, our WBS hierarchy. So we can create a new project in Unanet or refine an existing project and create a WBS accordingly. Once we have our projects and tasks defined, we can move over to entering in and refining our budgets. Our budgets can be entered in Unanet at the project level and or the task WBS level. It's entirely up to you at which level you want to collect and aggregate your costs. Once you have your budgets defined, what we recommend you do is take something called a budget snapshot on the first day of your project. Once your contract's been awarded, you've set it up in Unanet, take a budget snapshot of your project. A budget snapshot in Unanet is a picture, it's a snapshot in time of where your project was or is at the beginning of that period. Once you've taken that first initial budget snapshot, you can start charging time and expense to your project the way you normally do, through timesheets, through expense reports, through imported transactions. You start collecting those actuals against your project. As you begin collecting those actuals, you can go on and start doing periodic updates of a % complete and or a budget snapshot. What this will allow you to do is to take pictures at any given period of time. Let's say I have a 6-month period of performance on a project. What I want to do is establish a schedule of how often I'm going to take that budget snapshot in Unanet. My recommendation, my best practice would be to take it either on a semi-monthly or monthly basis. So you have a consistent and accurate schedule of how those snapshots should look. Once you take those snapshots, you can take those snapshots and run the earned value reports accordingly. You can execute those reports based on these budget snapshots. Now, if you take those budget snapshots too close in time, on a weekly basis, it's just too discrete of a measure. If you take them too far apart, based on milestones, maybe one on January 1st, one on March 31st, then you're losing a 3-month gap of how your project's actually performing within that period. So my recommendation would be on a semi-monthly or a monthly basis, at the same time every month to take those budget snapshots. And then you can execute those reports accordingly. Now let's switch over and take a look at how this looks in Unanet. I'm logged in.
Arthi, this is Tandy. Can you hear me?
Hi, Tandy.
I had a quick question from a customer who was asking about budget snapshots and should they correspond with project milestones? What are your thoughts? Okay.
It's a very good question, actually. Thank you, Tandy. So they could actually correspond with milestones. If your milestones are set, for example, if you have milestone A on January 31st, milestone B on February 28th, milestone C on March 31st, if they're at a consistent time every month at the same time, absolutely. Where it gets into a lot of variances and inconsistency is when those milestones are spread apart. A lot of times we're doing project management, we're setting up our WBS, our milestones one date here, 2 months later another milestone comes up, 2 weeks later the third milestone will come up. So there's no consistency as far as how those are broken out. And when you start losing that inconsistency is when your reporting sort of loses its effectiveness. So my recommendation would be is to always do it on a set schedule. If your milestone follows that set schedule, then absolutely you can do those budget snapshots to match those milestones.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, let's take a look in Unanet. Here I logged into our demo site. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to our project dashboard and take a look at an existing project. I'm going to go to project. Now you can create a new project for setting up your earned value, but for today's purposes, I'm going to look at an existing project in our demo site. I'm going to go to project, list, click on the list tab again. I'm going to find a project that we can look at. You'll see for today's reporting, I'm going to look at 2 projects that we're going to focus on. The first one is Customer 1 Reconstruction, and the second one is Customer 2 Data Warehouse. So I'm going to click on the edit pencil next to Customer 1 Reconstruction, and it takes us to the project profile screen for this project. We can see the project organization, code, title, the type, the billing type, and I'm going to move through over to the budget tab. The budget tab is where you're going to enter in information about your project, budget, dates, and so forth. So we'll see we have some original dates, revised dates. We have a total value, funded value, an hours budget, labor budgets broken out by bill and cost, and expense budget broken out by bill and cost. I'm going to come back to the screen in a little bit because this is going to come into play when we look at the reports in Unanet. Now, from a budgeting standpoint, it's up to you where you want to set your budgets at. You can do it at the project level in Unanet, or you can do it at the task level. It's all up to you on which level you want to aggregate and collect those costs. Like I said, you could do it at the project level and or at the task level. If you look at this task list, we'll see there's about 5 tasks already in the system. The longer the list of your tasks, the harder it is for you to accurately and collectively track those costs. So my recommendation is if you do want to set up your budgets at the task level, make sure it's probably not more than 20 or 30 or so tasks. The longer the list gets, the harder it becomes to manage it. So the more concise your WBS, the more structured it is, the more easier it is for you to aggregate and manage your costs accurately. If you click on the edit pencil next to one of these tasks, on the budget tab, here's where you could enter in your budgets accordingly. Now if I go back over here in profile, let's talk about how we can set up a budget snapshot. So I'm going to go all the way down to this area. I'm going to click on budget snapshots, and here's where I can add a budget snapshot for this particular project. Let's take a look and see if there are any existing budget snapshots in the system. I can do that by going to Budget Snapshots, Manage, If I click on Manage, Date Range, I'm going to do beginning of time to today, and I'm going to hit List. And it'll show me what the different snapshots I have at the project level and at the task level. So we'll see we have quite a few in there. I can also uncheck this to see just at the project level if I wanted to see what that hierarchy looked like. Now let's take a budget snapshot. Let's do Add. I'm going to pick an effective through date. Let's do it for yesterday. I'm going to save this metric at the project level. So I'm going to uncheck this box, and I'm going to hit Snapshot. Now if I go back to Manage, and I hit List again, we'll see my snapshot now exists. And this comes into play when it comes into reporting for earned value. What I'm going to do now is go back to the Profile, go to the Budget tab, and go to our Reports dashboard. We'll show you how to run the earned value reports out of Unanet. So I'm going to go to Reports. I'm going to go to the Project Reports section. Over here in this Financial Reports section is where you can find your earned value reports. I'm going to click on this first one. I'm going to filter by the two projects that I mentioned earlier. First one was Reconstruction and Data Warehouse. And if you're familiar with the other reports out of Unanet, you can see you can filter by project, project manager, project type, and by the current date range period. I am going to select beginning of time to today as well. And here are the different reporting options we have for our earned value reports. You can calculate this from the project budget or task budget. So it's up to you. Like I mentioned, you can set the project budget as the project level or the task level. Entirely up to you where you want to collect those costs. I'm going to select the project budget for today, and here are the different options you have for reporting. I'm actually going to uncheck this so I can see the amounts in thousands. And I can report on billable charges, cost, or burden cost. Now if I click on burden cost, we'll see it allows me to pick which cost rate I want to report on, target, provisional, or actual. If I click on cost, it defaults provisional. If I click on billable charges, it would just be on billable dollars. I can pick a threshold filter. I can include adjustments. I also have the option of including expenses. Now if I run this as is, let's take a look at our output. Here is our sample earned value report. Left-hand side, you see the project, the two that I picked, the percent complete, current period data. Where am I for the current period? It's looking at my budgeted cost of work scheduled based on my current period, what my budgeted cost of work performed is to date, which is my earned value, which is a percentage of your budgeted cost of budget at completion, and then my actuals, my actual cost of work performed is pulling from time and expense. My schedule variance, my cost variance is a calculated number. It's a mathematical number. My schedule variance is looking at my earned value minus my VCWS, my planned value. My cost variance is looking at my earned value minus my actuals. And this is red because it's the negative number. My schedule performance index and my cost performance index are also calculated numbers, and those calculations can be found down here as to how they're calculated. But those are calculated values. So this is looking at my current period, how I am performing to date against my CUME. We'll also see on the right-hand side the budgeted completion, estimated completion, and my variance at completion. My budgeted completion is coming from the information that I populated on my Project Budget Profile tab. So for example, if you see, we're looking at Project Customer 1 Reconstruction. Budgeted completion is $1.65 million. That is pulling over here from my labor bill budgeted dollars plus my expense bill budgeted dollars. If I go back to this chart and I hit back to criteria and I did this on cost and I rerun the report, we'll see my budgeted completion has changed because that number is pulling from the labor cost budget plus the expense cost budget, which is $1.5 million. Minor change, but just also something important to keep in mind when you're running this report if you see that change for bill versus cost. So if you take a look at this report, here's my budgeted completion. Yes, Tandy?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I did have a couple of questions from customers that I wanted to share.
Sure.
I have a question asking, what do you do if you want to set your budget at the summary task level but want to collect your actuals at the child task level or the non-summary task level?
Very good question. I would recommend you want to be consistent on both levels. So if you are setting up your budget at this child task level, I'm sorry, if you're collecting actual at this task level, you want to set up a budget accordingly. So the two have to be in sync. They should be in sync, I should recommend. They should be in sync. You will see some inconsistencies in the reporting if you set it at one versus the other and vice versa, collected at one from an actual standpoint versus a budget standpoint. So those two should go hand in hand.
Okay, thank you. I also have a question about the report and why is it showing 3 decimal places? I guess under
Very
SPI.
good question. Is that over here? Yeah,
Maybe.
It's a good question. I don't know if it's a criteria in the reporting. I think that's just how it comes out. Trying to see if there's a difference. No, there's no criteria in the reporting that makes it 2 versus 3.
Okay.
But we can take a look at that too as well. An action item.
Thanks.
Okay. And go back to that report. So we talked about this is the budget at completion. And here's your estimate total at completion. This estimate is your forecast. It's looking at, okay, based on how I've performed to date, where am I estimating to be at the end of this project? And right now, it's showing that I am going to be over what I had budgeted from a cost standpoint. So this variance is calculating this budgeted completion minus my estimated completion. If we look down here at the Customer 2 Data Warehouse project, we'll see we're actually performing under. Based on where we are to date, we're actually going to be under budget, which as we all know is probably better to be under budget than it is over budget. But this shows you how those two look. So this is the key forecast component of an earned value report. Based on how I've performed to date, here's where I'm estimating to be. Now these numbers are going to change as you charge more time and expense to these different projects. So if I go and I did my timesheet today and I charged 10 hours here or 12 hours here, this would change. Which is why I recommend you come into play. If you're going to use earned value in Unanet, you want to set up a consistent time frame for reporting so you can accurately measure how those changes are going to come into effect. Let's also look at the CPI and SPI. So we'll see the CPI and SPI for reconstruction is 0.709 and 0.979. What does that mean? An SPI of less than 1 is saying to me that I'm actually behind schedule. From a schedule standpoint, I'm behind schedule. A CPI greater than 1 means I'm actually ahead of schedule. I'm sorry, that was an SPI. A CPI of less than 1 means I'm actually overspending. I'm spending more than I said I was going to. A CPI of greater than 1 means I'm underspending. So if I look at reconstruction, not only am I behind schedule, but I'm spending more than I should have. So what are some factors that could play into that? If I look at customer 2 data warehouse project, I'm actually ahead of schedule and underspending. So based on those two comparisons, we'll see this project is performing better in comparison to this one. This is estimating me to be under budget at the end of the contract, and this is estimating to be over budget at the end of the contract. So there's two variances that are key to keep in mind as you are doing your earned value reporting out of Unanet.
All right, Thea, I have a few more questions, if you don't mind.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. A question about snapshots. Our customer says we are trying to develop our baseline or a snapshot of our budget. Are you suggesting after the projects have been created, along with tasks and budgets, that's when the snapshot should be created, before any budgeted hours are allocated?
I would say allocate your budget of hours accordingly. So set up all your budgets. I would set up your hours budget, your project budgets, your labor expense. If you have budgets for people assignments, set everything up right before you're ready to have folks start charging time and expense to this project. At that point, take your initial budget snapshot. After all your budgets have been established, at that point is when you take the initial budget snapshot. And then set up that schedule to consistently take those throughout the course of the project.
Okay, great. And then one more question. Which role do I have to give the project manager in order to allow them to enter budget information in project setup?
Very good question. They should have the project manager role, which allows them to enter in the budget information.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint. So we took a look in Unanet and looked at exactly how to set up the WBS, set up the budgets, take that initial budget snapshot, how you collect time and expense, and how the reporting comes into play. So as you leave the webinar today and you go back and think about how you want to set up your projects, what I would recommend you do is first set up a prototype project. It can be either a test project or one you want to start doing earned value reporting on. Set up your WBS and budgets accordingly. Take that initial budget snapshot, like we mentioned, once all your budget of hours, dollars has been set up at the project, budget, and or task level, entirely up to you, and take that initial budget snapshot and then set up that schedule for being consistent on how you take those periodically. Collect your actuals and then run your reports. The earned value reports are very key and fundamental for how you manage your project, see exactly what you budgeted to date, what you spent to date, what you've earned to date, as well as can come into real play when you're doing forecasting and how you want to estimate you're going to be at the end of your project life cycle. Overall, like I said, it helps manage your project more efficiently and effectively throughout that course and that period of time for that project.
Great, Arthi. I actually have a few more questions from customers that I thought we could cover.
Sure.
The first was, can I create a valid budget snapshot after my project has started by making the effective date the day before the project started?
You can. However, you will see some inconsistency in reporting. Earned value can be a very effective tool if it's done at the initial onset of a project. So if you're starting from scratch, and you're updating it consistently and you have that cycle in place, it's a very effective tool. Where it becomes tricky and becomes a challenge is when you try to go back and use it on a project that's already in place. And this is for not just projects in Unanet, but for other earned value systems I've worked on. So that's one of the challenges and the kinks about earned value is to go back and try and do it on something that's already been in place. It can be a bit challenging. Is it doable? Yes. But if you're aware of those inconsistencies and can manage that accordingly, then yes, you can do it that way.
Okay, great. Another question. On government projects, we track actual money, which is firm fixed price. How can you use earned value when money is fixed on the project?
You can use it from an internal cost standpoint. It is fixed price. Earned value reporting is one of those things that could go either way. So what I would recommend you do is to definitely use it from an internal cost standpoint on your fixed price projects. Now, if you have a contractual requirement to report on that, you absolutely can do it that way. You can set up your milestones, your fixed price items in Unanet. You have your actuals being recorded and how you're billing, but it's just one of those things where you will see less variances throughout the course of the project than you would with T&M or Cost Plus.
Okay, thank you. And then I wondered if you wouldn't mind showing the line chart in the demo system.
Sure.
Just so customers can see, I think it's the SPI, CPI line chart.
I think we have a sample here. So what Tandy asked me to show you was the SPI, the Schedule Performance Index over Cost Performance Index line chart in Unanet. And what this depicts is how that CPI and SPI is looking over that given period of time. So I'm looking at this report. I'm just going to 2 sample projects. We'll see that the CPI starting January 14th was pretty good. It started out above 1. We were underspending. Haven't dipped below 1 yet, so we're actually pretty good. From a cost standpoint, we're performing well. From a schedule standpoint, if we look up here, we started out very well. We were ahead of schedule. So this is showing me we were ahead of schedule up here, then all of a sudden something happened that impacted the project, making me go down, still ahead of schedule, but we're slowing down a little bit. So what's causing us to slow down? What's causing this drop to happen? We're not to the point that we're under 1, but something is affecting us from a cost versus schedule standpoint. So it's definitely painting that picture for us of how our schedule and cost is performing together. If we look at another sample, let's take a look.
So this chart would be great sort of hand in hand with the earned value report if you wanted to show a visual picture.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. The earned value report is giving you the numbers in that chart format, and this is showing it to you in a visual format. So I'm going to actually do this. Another example. If we look at this one, this was the 2 projects that I looked at earlier. I'm going to go back and pick one. For customer 1 reconstruction, CPI. We were spending more than we should have initially right off the gate. So we were overspending, continuing to overspend, and we're kind of on that downward spiral. Same from a schedule standpoint. We were behind schedule from day 1, spending more at the same time, falling again from a schedule standpoint, still falling, and still going down. So this is showing me something's wrong in my project. Early on there were indicators, and it's just gotten worse and worse. So yes, to Tanya's point, this chart, along with the earned value report, is a good measure of how we're performing over that given period of time.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay. So Tandy, I know you want to talk through a few slides. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure. Yes, if you could continue to step through the slides. I just wanted to share some customer resources with everyone today and make sure that you were aware of them. We do have an online knowledge center that we have built based on customer feedback. And Arthi, if you can click on that iterative circle there, it'll take us through to the Knowledge Center and we'll take a look. We have several different types of content on our Knowledge Center. And that content does include previously recorded webinars from the past few years that you can watch and view at your leisure. You can also share with other team members. So here it is, our Knowledge Center. The quick and easy way to get to it is either typing kc.unanet.com in your URL field or knowledgecenter.unanet.com. And this is a public website available where we have gathered valuable content. And again, a great resource if you're training new employees or if you want to share information with colleagues. As you can see, the types of content include various videos of different lengths and then quick topics and frequently asked questions that do often include screenshots that you're welcome to use. We have it organized here in an outline form on the left. And Arthi, if you wouldn't mind clicking through to the project management section. And we do have a section on EVM. And this is where we'll post today's webinar once we have the recording.